We are here in my shop in lovely Towanda, Pennsylvania. Before I started making knives and making a living at it, you could probably fill up a garbage can with jobs, and I probably did all of them in there. I mean, I did forklift driving, security guard, bartender. Never really cared for much of it. I never was really career-oriented. Sliding into knife making was no problem at all. Mostly started from movies, books, stuff like that. I always like the fantasy stuff, the old Conan movies, sword swinging, dragons and stuff like that. And I fooled around with that kind of stuff for a while. And it just got to the point where it's like, nobody's carrying swords around, but people are carrying knives all the time. So, when I was in Virginia, I started puddling around making knives. And I was at a small knife show in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And there's a nice guy across the way from me from Maryland called Keith Bagley. He's a farrier by trade. And basically he came over to my table and looked at my knives and took pity on me. And he invited me down to his shop for a weekend. And in, I think it was 2 or 3 days, he showed me the basics of forging a blade, basics of forge welding and making Damascus, and answered a lot of questions for me. And it was just beginning to be winter. I was still at the old house in Wyalusing, and I had an anvil, and I drug it out of the barn, a little hand crank forge, and it's snowing. And it's like, I don't care. I'm gonna learn how to do this. I don't care if it snows. I don't care if it hails. And yeah, I just got a passion for it. Damascus is taking 2 or more different steels and forge welding them to a semi-plastic state, enough where they can be forge welded and compressed into one homogeneous piece of steel. And that way, when you finish it and you etch it to get that pattern out, the different steels etch at different rates, and that's how you get that distinction between the steels. Well, you join the American Bladesmith Society, you start off as an apprentice before you can take your journeyman test. Journeyman test is you're making a 10-inch blade, no more than 2 inches wide, no more than 15 inches overall, out of single steel. And then you have to do a performance test where you cut a 1-inch rope in half with one swing, chop a 2x4 in half twice, and still be able to shave the hair off your arm with the spot you were chopping. And then they do the bend test, where you'll put it in a vise and bend the blade 90 degrees, and you want it to come back at least 20 degrees. After you pass the journeyman, you got to wait 2 years to take your master's test. Whereas you do pretty much the exact same thing, except you're doing it with a Damascus blade and a hidden tang as opposed to a full tang. So it's a lot riskier. If you survive those tests, afterwards you get to make 5 knives. You take them to the Atlanta Blade Show and they get judged by mastersmiths to see whether you pass or not. Same thing goes with the mastersmith, except you make anything you want, except one of them has to be a European Quillian dagger. My last count, there was around 110 to 115 mastersmiths in the world. Yeah, so it's really not that many. Yeah, I was over there in the corner forging blades, and I got a phone call out of the blue. And I said, oh, this is so-and-so from the History Channel. We want to talk to you about a knife making show we're thinking about, Forged in Fire. And I said, yeah, okay, who's this really? So it took her about 10 minutes to actually convince me she was from the History Channel. So I went ahead and tried. I talked to them, and they said, oh, we want you to be a judge. I was like, oh, that sounds way easier. Yeah, let's do that. Let's give it a shot. Dave and Doug had already been picked as judges weeks ahead of time. So, and they were like calling each other on the phone, like, who's this Neilson guy? Do you know anything about him? Being a judge on the show is basically doing what I've been doing for years and years, critiquing somebody's work, testing it for quality, stuff like that. It's actually one of the things you're supposed to do as a master smith, to help other smiths, help them with their work, point out what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, how they can improve on stuff like that. So it's very similar to what I do normally, except I'm stuck in a chair and I can't go down and point out what you should be doing. The testing is a little more brutal. I mean, it's kind of based the way the ABS is. You strength test, sharpness test for the round of 1 and 2, which is where I focus most of my attention on. So it's very similar. It's just coming up with stuff that is doable. I mean, I get hate mail from people about the ridiculous tests we do, the idiotic tests we do. It's like, well, I did it with my own knives. before we ask the contestants to do it. So I know it's doable. I'm happy to say I've only broken one of my blades doing pre-testing. But yeah, some of the crazy tests people talk about, they don't know the half of it, as we've done so much testing on things that never made it onto the show with knives that I've made specifically for pre-testing. And I mean, there was one time I had like a 12-foot board laid in front of me and had pieces of chain and cable, and it just got worse and worse. And they're like, chop all that up. And I'm sitting there swinging, bashing on the chains and everything. And I'm like, I hate you guys. You're not my friends. You were never my friends. I hate you all. So I brutalized a lot of my stuff too. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for contestants because I'm not going to ask them to do something I can't do. Everybody thinks it's a strength test, but it's really not. My favorite part, and I tell the contestants this also, I've either put the challenge together or have done the challenge already or whatever. I know what I would do, and I can usually tell, 15, 20 minutes in if they know what to do. And there's been a few times where I've like, that's not going to work. He's totally screwed that up. And then he make it work. I was like, damn, how do you do that? That's pretty cool. I got to try that next time I go to my shop. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy that, see where they're going. And then it gives us a springboard of what to start talking about at the table also. When I first started going to New York City to shoot the first couple seasons, you couldn't get me out of that room. I would go from the studio to the car, from the car into my room at the hotel, and that's it. Dave and Doug would bug me constantly. Come on, let's go out, get some sushi or something like that. And you go ahead. I'm all right. I bring coolers full of food and I make my own food. That's what I did on my days off. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I couldn't picture myself doing it. I like the fact that I'm at the end of a dead-end dirt road on top of a hill and I'm the loudest thing up here. But nobody's going to come and complain because I'm the crazy guy that swings knives on TV. No, it's just nice and peaceful. I mean, one of the reasons I started making knives was just to relax, to vent out your day. Beating hot steel on an anvil with a hammer is a really good way to relieve some stress. And over the years, I've spoken with first responders and veterans and stuff like that, and that's why they specifically got into it too. And I've been able to help some of them, get into the knife making, improve, and it just kind of takes some of the strain away. So yeah, it's a good relaxation mechanism. And just keep experimenting. Never run out of stuff to do. Jay Neilson, North Central, Pennsylvania.